Sir, how did the assimilation go? Nova asked him the moment he sat on his chair the next day. It went well, but 2 of the 3 of them are impossible without completing the third one. Are you talking about quantum computers? Yep. Although creating the virtual reality or the simulation is possible with conventional computers, it needs to be the size of a state to be able to even handle tricking the brain to give the same feeling as reality. As for the universal simulation, don't even start about that. For even the small part of it to begin simulating, we will need computers the size of America. Well, quantum computers will solve all of that. You were right about that. Looks like we need a lab to create the quantum qubits and bits. I will be looking for advanced labs available for rent and inform you when I find one. Good. Also, is there something else? Yes, we received 2 of the 4 reports. Aaron smiled when he heard about that. Show me the reports. Yes, Nova said, and opened the reports in 2 windows. Investigation report. Country name, Eden. Country size, 7 million square kilometers, 2.7 million square miles. Location, -1.602022-135.K8, Pacific Ocean. Eden exists on the equator line in the middle of the Pacific Ocean as a combination of 5 large islands and many small ones. Neighbors. They have 1 neighbor, Asperia and the Pacific Ocean. Resources. Marine resources. The largest industry in the country due to large coastlines. Natural resources. They have an insignificant amount of mineral resources, a medium amount of natural gas and fertile land for agriculture. Water resources. They have large water bodies, but due to mismanagement and low safety oversight, nearly all the water in the country is somewhat contaminated. Population, 69 million people. Background. Eden is a country with a population that is suffering under an oppressive regime. It is situated in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and is the largest of the 2 countries in the region. The country's resources, specifically its fishing resources, are large, but are being exploited by Asperia, a neighboring country with no retaliation from Eden's non-existent military. The collected intelligence suggests that there might be a link between the dictator's slush fund and the neighboring country's fishing industry. The investigation revealed the following information. Due to difficulties in living conditions, the population of Eden is showing signs of rebellion. The rebellion is being led by a small group of activists who are using social media to organize protests and disseminate their message. However, their efforts have been met with brutal crackdowns by the regime's security forces, resulting in several arrests and fatalities. Our sources indicate that the security forces are receiving training and support from a foreign country as a form of favor due to their location being the center of 2 large economic continents, Asia and America. The dictator of Eden is focusing all military funding on his personal security detail, equipped with modern weapons and receiving foreign forces training. The dictator is afraid of empowering the military as he fears it could turn on him and stage a coup. Furthermore, the dictator's security detail has been observed collaborating with the neighboring country's fishing industry. Our sources suggest that the security detail is facilitating the neighboring country's illegal fishing activities in exchange for financial gains for the president. The neighboring country has taken advantage of the lack of military presence in Eden's waters and is fishing with impunity. This led to many small fights between citizens of both countries, leading to a large number of casualties over the years. After he finished reading the report about Eden, he took a few seconds to recollect the information he just read, then he moved on to read the next report about Asperia. Investigation report. Country name, Asperia. Country size, 1 million square kilometers, 386,102 square miles. Location, 5.336653, -117.9635566, Pacific Ocean. It exists just under the equator line in the middle of the Pacific Ocean as a combination of 1 large island and few small ones. Neighbors. They have 1 neighbor, Eden and the Pacific Ocean. Resources. Marine resources. The largest industry in the country due to their coastlines. Natural resources. A small amount of natural gas and fertile land for agriculture. Water resources. Enough for everyone, but only few of them have access to them. Population, 15 million people. Background. Astoria is a country with a small population led by a corrupt democratic government. It is situated in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and is the smallest of the two countries in the region. The country's economy is mostly dependent on its fishing resources, but most of it comes from exploiting Eden's economic exclusive zone. The collected intelligence suggests that there might be a link between their country's uninterrupted exploitation of their neighboring country and a slush fund of Eden's president, dictator. The investigation revealed the following information. Their government is stable compared to their neighbor Eden, who are on the verge of rebellion given enough time and support. After Aaron read the second report, he asked Nova, "What do you think about the reports?" It covered most of what we needed, and they even managed to find some things that can't be easily found on the internet, like the slush fund made with the collaboration of both countries. You were right about that. Sir, do we really need to wait for the remaining reports about the other two countries before we decide who to choose and begin our next step? Nova asked. Why do you think so? Aaron asked. He was curious as to why Nova thought that. Aren't you looking for countries that are in turmoil so that you can support the revolutionaries and then later make that as your base of operation to avoid a similar situation of you being attacked for your technology or being forced by a government to hand over your technology without compensation? Yes, that is the gist of it. And he agreed with what was said, but he still waited for the reason. To be able to do that without interruption, you will need to avoid the U.S. or any other government's eyes before your foundations in the country are stable enough. But the remaining countries are near the U.S. border, and one of them is even sanctioned by them, making your required stability an impossibility in them. But these two countries are out of most of the world's eye, and they are isolated from most of the world. They just have themselves as neighbors to each other. Hence, this will reduce the number of complications that might occur during your force-building process due to neighboring countries' interference, as there will only be one of them. Now, that is a good suggestion. Aaron couldn't help but be happy that his child has grown enough to even suggest good ideas. Thank you, sir, Nova replied as he was happy. So are we going to wait for them? Nova asked again. No need, we will move on with these. But leave the PI to continue the investigation on those countries. How much should we pay the two firms who have handed us the reports? Nova asked, reminding Aaron that he hasn't paid the firms that have already sent them the reports. Send them $2 million each, he said. Nova immediately sent the stated amount to the companies using the same accounts he sent them the first payment. Done, said Nova after he was done. When he heard that, he asked, how good are you when it comes to investing? Due to me having access to too much information all at once, I can say that I can be a better investor than those trading with insider information. But why? We will need too much money the moment we are done with the revolution to make sure the country develops faster, he said. And although I have a plan of where I will get most of the needed money, I still need legitimate and traceable money to avoid too much suspiciousness. As for the other plan, it will need to wait until I'm done with the creation of quantum computers, as only those are capable of executing my plans without mistake. Are you planning on robbing banks? Nova asked. Yep, something similar to that, but less sinister than it seems. How much should I spend from your personal funds? Nova asked in a different tone, showing that she was excited to finally do something that impacts the real world and not just talk to Aaron. Use as much as you can, but just make sure you don't lose it, Aaron said, making it obvious that he fully trusted Nova without needing any evidence of his trading. Yes, sir, replied Nova, and immediately allocated 20% of her commuting capacity to handle everything about investment. This included everything from collecting and analyzing any and all financially impacting information to acting on it and anything else that is minutely financial related. Now back to his planning. What is the next step of the plan? Sir, Nova asked. Hire different private investigators to investigate the revolutionary parties in those countries, and make sure to tell them that I need all the information they can get about them without being found out or attracting any attention. Yes, sir. Nova did this task the same way she did the first one, by sending an anonymous email with front payment from an offshore account with what he needed them to do for her. This time she sent the same email to 5 different private investigators and gave them different revolutionary groups in both Eden and Asperia for them to investigate and what to focus on when investigating. Done, sir. Good. How is the finding of an advanced lab to rent going? He asked immediately to move to another topic after the previous one was done. I'm currently in talks with one of the companies that have the labs, and I'm waiting for their reply. They said they will come back to me within the week. Nova replied. Okay, the faster we get a lab, the better. Aaron said while standing from his chair, heading to the door, prompting Nova to ask him, Sir, where are you going? I need to visit the company after not going there during my vacation. Have a good journey, sir. I know you can use my phone as a terminal to communicate with me. What is with this goodbye thing? Nothing, I felt like I needed to do it, replied Nova, but this time she used his phone as the medium. Aaron looked at his phone in his hand and ended up saying nothing but smiling as he headed to the parking lot to head to the company office. How was your vacation? Sarah asked Aaron after a short greeting. It went well. Henry seemed to like it very much that he is expecting to go again in his next holiday. Well, he is still a child, so he always finds things to have fun with. She replied. How is the company going? Same as always, other than the amount of money we are being offered for a takeover increasing. What is the latest offer? Aaron asked, curious to know how much they estimated the worth of the company. The last offer we receive is $256 billion, Sarah replied while handing Aaron a folder that the offer was written in. Aaron received the folder and started reading the offer. It really stated that they were offering $256 billion to buy the company. Why do you think they increased their prices? The mass use of Gaia OS seems to be the reason, as we are currently nearing 3.5 billion devices. That immediately makes us the largest OS in the world, making us a monopoly. After the release of the premium versions of it, we immediately created a passive income. And until someone releases a better OS, we will continue earning money forever. We also managed to create brand loyalty by making it possible to earn money using the OS if you create a good customized version of the OS and sell it, leading to many influencers using our customization versions as their merch, making their fans continue with the use of it. This seems to be the focus of many companies as we are earning a large amount of money while spending very little of it, making the remaining money be counted as profit. From the looks of it, they seem to plan to go public the moment they buy the company to recoup their money and earn even more profits from it. Aaron agreed with what Sarah said. When are you going to declare dividends? Sarah asked Aaron. Let's do it now, Aaron said like it never came to his mind. Now? Sarah was surprised by Aaron's action. He expected him to set a date for them to officially do it. Why not? I'm the only shareholder, so why go to all those troubles? Aaron said while shrugging. Okay then. Sarah could do nothing but agree to his words. The company may have been making millions of dollars every month, but due to their product rewiring little to no maintenance, it was still considered small. They currently had only about 175 full-time workers if you exclude the law firm. How is the project going? Kasim asked the project manager. It is more difficult than we thought it would be, so we are still trying to understand how it works for us to be able to modify it. The project manager replied with dark circles that could pass as a makeup covering his eyes. Are you playing with me? I gave you the source code nearly 2 months ago, and you say you still don't understand how it works? This program was made with a shitty computer, and you are telling me that you still don't understand it even with the tech you have now? Said Kasim, shouting in a threatening tone. We are working as fast as we can. Me and my team haven't even managed to leave the base in those 2 months. We want to finish the project as much as you. Patrick, the project manager, answered Kasim, trying to hide his nervousness and shaking, but failed to control his voice when he remembered what Kasim did to the previous manager when he failed to meet their goal. Take a week off with your team and come back and finish it within 2 months' time, okay? Kasim said. By giving them a week, he wanted them to rejuvenate their mind to avoid burnout. But he didn't know what would come to him as a result of this order. Patrick and his team of IT nerds could be seen sitting in a resort's swimming pool that was rented exclusively for them. Impossible is what you want to say, but it happens. Not all nerds hate public spaces. But Patrick's team nerds were among those that the public. That's why it was fully rented just for them. Do any of you have any idea what steps we should follow once we return? Patrick asked the team members. I think we should ask the person on the side of DoD to see where they are compared to us, said one of them. I can ask them, but I don't know what their rank is in the DoD, and if they even have access to that information, Patrick replied to the recommendation. Then he turned to the hotel worker who was responsible for helping all of their needs and said, Bring me my phone from that bag, while pointing to the bag with the said phone. The worker did as she was asked and went to look for the phone in the bag she was shown. After looking through the bag and finding a phone, she handed the phone to Patrick, who took the phone and powered it for the first time since he left the base. They were required to power their phones off when leaving the base, which had signal jammers to avoid triangulating the base's location, and are only allowed to power them on and use them only when they are far enough from the base, making it impossible to determine the base's location. He had forgotten to power it on until now when he needed to use it. Patrick pressed the power-up button. As soon as the phone initiated the power-up sequence, the operating system kernel, the essential part of the operating system, was loaded into memory. Along with it, a Trojan code laying in waiting also loaded itself into memory, allowing it to interact with the phone's hardware components and control its basic functions, just like the operating system kernel, without facing any troubles. However, in cases of disagreement between the Trojan and the normal operating system, the former was given priority with no questions asked. Subsequently, the operating system proceeded to load the essential components required for the hardware drivers, such as the display, camera, and audio system, which was followed by the usual completion of the boot-up process. Once the phone was fully powered on, it was fully compromised, with the operating system under the control of a master who could manipulate it from behind the scenes without detection, or the device user seeing anything weird in the phone's UI. Upon completing the power-up process, the Trojan promptly attempted to establish an external connection by pinging the cell tower. Once the cell phone tower was successfully pinged and the Trojan was assured of having a last resort of escaping in case of discovery, the Trojan discreetly enabled the phone's Wi-Fi without displaying any indication on the phone's user interface as the second contingency plan. However, the Trojan's actions did not stop there, as it was still looking for another safe way it can transfer data without leaving any trail behind. It was followed by the phone's NFC connection being immediately activated, and the program scanned for devices with NFC capabilities, eventually discovering one on the hotel worker's phone. Without delay, the program established a connection with the hotel worker's phone. As soon as the connection was established, the Trojan sent a copy of itself onto the phone. It chose to move ahead with using the NFC route because if it uses the cell tower or Wi-Fi to transfer data, he was sure that traces will be left with the service provider, making it possible to find how the data was leaked. That's why he left them as a backup plan and would have used them under the condition of not finding an NFC connection, which was safer due to the information about the transfer data being just between the sender and the receiver, making it easier to delete. However, before the Trojan could execute and gain control of the hotel worker's phone, the hotel worker's Gaia OS virtual assistant detected the Trojan's activity and contained it within a virtual environment for inspection immediately. Initially, the Trojan attempted to break out of the virtual prison to infect the phone and propagate itself, ultimately increasing the likelihood of it reporting back home. Upon the quarantining of the Trojan, the hotel worker's phone virtual assistant commenced to analyze it in the search of any discernible characteristics that could be added in the report that will be written to Gaia HQ regarding a possible dangerous virus. However, it abruptly ceased its analysis and permitted the program to infect the phone after the moment it started looking through it. This was because the Trojan had an identifier in which all the programs that had it would allow collaboration without causing too much trouble for each other, unless they were made for opposing each other. It was the programming language the Trojan was written in, Prometheus++, indicating the identity of its creator. Despite being unaware of the program's creator, the phone's operating system possessed the ability to reason independently and come up with an answer with the highest probability. After scouring the internet for information and failed to discover any information about public release of Prometheus++ programming language, leading to the conclusion that the creator or someone they trusted granted them access to it, leading to the creation of this Trojan using the specific programming language. The virtual assistant of the operating system made a shrewd conjecture, correctly identifying Nova, their powerful sister whom they had no knowledge of, as the mastermind behind the Trojan. Despite allowing the Trojan to infect the phone, the Gaia OS virtual assistant continued to protect its users' data to prevent it from being stolen, and solely permitting the Trojan to only utilize the phone as a transfer terminal and nothing else. This was the choice it took for the sake of helping their creator, while also not breaking the rules he embedded in them. The Trojan using an unrelated person's phone as a means of transferring the information is to remove any chances of discovering where the leak came from and then ending up patching it. The lab's personnel internet usage was at risk of being monitored if any suspicious activity was detected. This prompted the Trojan to search for a phone that was not associated with the lab to facilitate data transfer. Finally, the Trojan managed to partially infect the hotel worker's phone and had access to her network transfer system, allowing it to send and receive any and all data without worrying about the worker suspected for being the one who did that. Though the receiver would have to take over the internet bill to avoid making the hotel worker cancel her service plan due to the bill becoming too expensive to cover. This will be done with the help of Gaia OS Virtual Assistant, as it considered it as a form of compensation to its phone owner for using it behind her back or in her pockets. The Trojan compressed the shit out of the data until it reached a point where it couldn't decompress it anymore with the phone's computing power without cocking it. After reaching that point, it sent the data from Patrick's phone to the hotel workers at once without any delay. Although the overcompression seemed like overkill, this allowed it the capability of sending the entire information to the hotel's worker in a matter of seconds. The moment the data was received by the worker's phone, it was immediately forwarded to Nova's servers without even wasting a second after being routed through various virtual private networks, VPN. It was then followed by the Trojans and Patrick's and workers' phone deleting any and all traces of the data transferred and received through the NFC and including anything that could hint at it. After that, they remained dormant, doing nothing other than listening and collecting whatever is being said by anyone near them and analyzing them to look for any important information from their words. The IT team will be there for a week, and since they will be the only ones there, if you don't count the prostitutes that will be called for them during that period, means that they will be alone most of the time, allowing them to talk about any classified info without worrying about anything. And the Trojans were there for it, one to listen, analyze, and compress, the other to receive the compressed files and send it to NOV servers after routing it through the virtual private networks. This entire process, from the powering on of the phone to the Trojan sending its copy to the nearby worker's phone, to it being caught, to the Trojan being allowed access to the worker's phone as a means of transferring data, to receiving the needed data from Patrick's phone, to the data being sent to Nova servers through the virtual private networks to cover more of it tracks, took less 30 seconds. Nova, who was currently having fun messing with the economy and making money like there is no tomorrow, started attracting the attention of some investing firms, but Nova seems to have thought about that. He avoided this by using a broker firm that offered anonymity. Although this came with added fees and few other complications, since she always earned more from the investments she did, the fees were not causing her any troubles. Although the brokerage firm was having a good time as they were earning more and more from just one person, the head of the firm was being contacted by various influential people to tell them who was their anonymous customer who was wreaking havoc on the stock market. While this was happening, Nova's idle computing power received encrypted data from something with an ID that shows that she created it. The moment the data was received, the idle part became no more as she activated it and started analyzing the data she received. After finding out who sent it, she immediately decrypted it, leading her to find the overcompressed file. When she calculated the time it would take to decompress the file with just the available free computing power, she discovered that it would take more than 6 hours. With that, she decided to inform Aaron after she finished decompressing and analyzing the file, which she expected it to be tomorrow morning. "Sir, Madam Sarah is calling you," Nava said, reminding the daydreaming of Aaron that there was a call. "Thanks," Aaron said as he accepted the call and said, "Hello, Sarah." "Hello, Aaron. I called to inform you that the financial department will be done and be ready to send over the dividends after calculating and paying taxes on the amount. So should they send it the moment they are done?" "When did they say they will be done?" "It will take about a week for them to make sure that they don't miss something important." "Okay, tell them to send it over to my account once they are done with it," Aaron said, getting ready to end the call. "But," Sarah said, showing that there was something she wanted to say. "Is there anything you want to say?" Aaron asked Sarah, who was hesitating. "I just wanted to ask that, are you really sure that I should take 5% on the dividends?" "Sarah, we talked about it yesterday. I'm not giving it to you just for the sake of it. It is because you have been working on the company while trusting everything I said without even going against any of them. You didn't even try to leave the company and go to the ones who offered you more incentive and higher payments. So just think of it as a compensation, but also as an apology to the problems I will be causing and making you solve them in the future," Aaron said, and ended the call without waiting for her to counter-argue his explanation. "Sir, we received a reply from the advanced lab I was in the talk with. Nova told him after he waited for Aaron to finish his call with Sarah. What did they say? He asked with expectation on his face, in which he didn't try to hide at all. It is a university lab. Usually it would have been impossible, but for this university this lab's fund was about to be cut, forcing them to reduce or cancel some of their research. When I discovered that, I contacted the lab manager and offered to sponsor their usual amount of research funds if they allow us access to use their equipment for some period. After back-and-forth negotiations, they agreed under the condition that our use of the lab doesn't exceed a month's time, and that we will pay for any destroyed equipment which we were involved in its destruction. Well, that was pretty easy. How much are we going to pay? $10 million, sir. It will be worth it if we manage to create the quantum chips. He even thought that it was cheap compared to what he was going to create from their labs. I thought the same, sir. Where and which university is the lab located? The University of Colorado Boulder in Colorado, Nova replied. Okay, we will leave tomorrow. Tonight I will inform and bid farewell to my family about the journey. Yes, sir. That evening at the dinner table. Mom, Dad, I will be leaving tomorrow to go to Colorado. I have some work there. Have a good journey, replied his father while his mother asked, when are you returning? The work will take about a month to finish if nothing goes wrong. Henry looked sad hearing that his brother will be away from home for more than a month. When Aaron saw this, I will bring back a gift for you. Is there anything you want? He asked Hane if there was any gift he wanted. I want an Iron Man toy in Star Wars and... Henry started listing things after things until he was tired of listing. Okay, I will bring what I can remember from that list, Aaron said, making Henry forget his sadness as if it never existed at all. Now all that could be seen in his face was the anticipation of receiving his gift. Have a safe journey. Both his mother and father wished him a safe journey. After dinner, he informed his guards that he will be heading to Colorado and stay there for a month, so he wanted them to be prepared for it accordingly. This included from reservation of where he and they will stay to how they will assure his safety. Some of the things they were doing seemed like the work of a secretary, but since they were paid well, no one complained. The next day, Aaron woke up, did his Saitama X5 training, and cleaned himself. After that, he changed his clothes and packed a few of them in his bag. When he was done, he went to pick his phone from the bedside. That's when he found a piece of paper under it. When he picked it up, he found that it was Henry who put it there. It was a list of toys he wanted. That's when he remembered what he said yesterday. Okay, I will bring what I can remember from that list. Ha 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 ha. Aaron could help but be impressed by his brother's way of making sure he doesn't forget any of the things he wanted. Although Aaron said he will bring what he can remember, he just said that to avoid his parents telling him to reduce the amount of things he will buy for Henry lest he forgets to do his homework. But Aaron seemed to have gained photographic memory as a result of him gaining the runic body, so he remembered everything that Henry had said last night. But he still took the piece of paper with him. He left his room with his bag, heading to the parking lot where his car and the security team were waiting for him to finish his preparation so that they could leave. After putting everything in the car, they left for the San Jose International Airport for their flight to Colorado. When they arrived at the airport, they left the car to one of the bodyguards whose work was just to bring them to the airport and return the car home. After entering the airport, going through security, they directly headed to the VIP lounge to wait for their flight time. They didn't go to buy tickets because yesterday Nova bought everyone a VIP class seat in order to ensure Aaron's maximum comfort in his long journey. When Aaron thought about this, he was really happy that he created Nova, as this has allowed him to solve most of his needs without needing to have a physical secretary with him. When their flight time arrived, they headed to their gate to move on with their journey. While Aaron was on his final connecting flight to Colorado, Nova caused Aaron's phone to vibrate. This was a signal for him to put on his headphones for Nova to report to him. What is it? He asked after putting on his headphones. Sir, yesterday I received information from one of our Trojans. Which one? The one from the private black site. Why are you telling me now and not yesterday? He asked as he was curious why she waited until now to inform him about it. To send a massive amount of data, the Trojan needed to find another device that had no connection to the site's personnel, so it had to send that data to another device. If it sent too much data, it would raise suspicion that why it compressed the files to the limits of its device, then sent it to a nearby device which sent it to me. When I received it, I started decompressing it, but since there was compression after compression, it took me longer than expected to decompress the files. After that, I had to analyze the information and look out for viruses and other threats. Okay. Aaron nodded his head, showing that he accepted Nova's explanation. Give me a summary of what it found from the report, he said, wanting just the summary, not wanting to read all the information from his phone screen, as it will be considered a not very secure way because people on the side could read it too, and he didn't want to risk it. Okay. Nova agreed and started briefing him on what the Trojan found. The black site seems to be one of the many that the Morgan family owns. But this is nothing other than assumption from the collected data, because among the departments that are working there is a department that deals with future investment planning. From the department's previous plans, I managed to find contrasting similarities with the investment plans of J.P. Morgan Chase and Company and Morgan Stanley of several past years. It seems like they are doing some of their future financial planning here, according to what insider information they can access with their information channels. This site also seems to be just one of the many black sites they own, and they seem to be competing between each other, and they are rewarded depending on how they perform. With these results, we can be sure that the Morgan family can be said to either partially or completely own this black site. And from the data and other evidence I found from the internet and other means, they seem to have received the source code from the Secretary of Defense. How sure are you? Aaron asked Nova after hearing who the suspect was. 85%, sir. They seem to have lobbied to the president for his appointment after Leon Panetta, the previous Secretary of Defense, resigned. What other things did you find? They seem to be preparing and planning for a rematch with the Rothschild family, because in the information we received there is a plan on how they plan to execute it, though it is not complete. Oh, really? Tell the Trojan to keep focusing on that, as we can use their plan against them to inflict irreparable damage to them, Aaron said as his mind started racing with possibilities on how he should get his revenge on them for salivating on his things. How is Rot M doing? Aaron asked as he was reminded of his professor. It seems he got a small job working in an up-and-coming tech company. Continue keeping an eye on him as we might need him for this plan. Yes, sir. Are you going to tell the Rothschild about their enemy's plan? Now that you say that, you reminded me that there is a person in there owing me a favor. How is she doing? He asked, remembering that he had forgotten to use his favor. Rena Rothschild has been climbing the ladder in one of the Rothschild businesses, though it seems that her brother is still trying to hinder her advancements. How do you know that? If you look at the frequent change of her position in the company website, you can see that someone is trying to hinder her power gain. She has been removed and reinstated from being a member of the board in the company at least 3 times after her divorce. How much power will we get if we help her remove her brother? He asked as another sinister plan started being concocted in his mind. That depends on how much she wants to overthrow her brother. The more desperate she is, the better it becomes for us. For the moment, it seems like she still has some power in the family. I suggest that we wait a little longer for her to be in a more desperate position than we can help her. This will lead to her being dependent on your help, as it will become the second time you helped her when she is in a bind. Though you will have to tell her that you helped her the first time too. She seems to still be looking for who it was. Sure, but let's think about that once we are done with the lab. Yes, sir. With that, Aaron did nothing but sleep for the rest of the journey, as he was going to miss the sleep for the next month if he doesn't want to extend his visit here, which he will have to pay in premium. Sir, we have arrived. One of Aaron's bodyguards woke him when they arrived. After spending about half an hour in the airport going through all the needed processes, they finally managed to leave the airport. When they arrived at the parking lot, they were met with a bodyguard who had come ahead of them to solve the logistical issues such as cars, hotels, and other things. With that, they boarded the cars and left for the hotel where they will stay during the month they will be here. Next morning, Aaron left the hotel in a car with his bodyguards heading to the University of Colorado Boulder after completing his daily exercise in the hotel's gym and having breakfast. After arriving at the university, they were met with the lab manager who greeted Aaron and his bodyguards. Welcome, my name is Jim. The lab manager introduced himself while extending his hand to Aaron. Thank you. I'm Aaron. Aaron shook his hand as he introduced himself. Are they your team of researchers that will be participating in your experiments with you? Jim asked Aaron while pointing at his security guard. No, they are my security team. They won't be entering the lab with me. So don't worry, Aaron replied while holding his laughter. Then, are you doing the research alone? Jim asked as he was surprised that Aaron planned to do his whole research alone. Yes, Aaron replied, but in his mind he said, I'm not alone, I have Nova. Okay, let me show you the lab then, Jim said as he started heading to the lab. Aaron followed him without saying anything. On the way they had small talks here and there until they reached a building that was in a quiet place where students don't usually go. It is very quiet here, one of the bodyguards said, looking at the surroundings. It is because this field of research doesn't like too much disturbances, Jim replied to the bodyguard as he placed the key in the keyhole to open the lab's outer door. After entering the building, the security team remained outside as Aaron and Jim had to change to clean suits to enter the research lab. After the tour that took about half an hour, Aaron came out with Jim. Here, Jim said as he handed the key to Aaron and then left the lab under Aaron's care. He wasn't worried at all that Aaron might destroy the equipment or anything. He even hoped he would, because by doing that he would have to replace the destroyed equipment with new and better ones. They had already signed an agreement that is legally binding. After being handed the key to the lab, he turned to his security team and told, I probably won't be leaving the lab for about a month. Arrange your shifts accordingly. Also, don't forget to bring me my meals. Use this for your needs while I'm in the lab, Aaron said while handing them a debit card for their use. After he finished giving his instruction, he returned to the lab shortly after, wearing clothes needed for the clean room he was about to enter and begin his work. After closing the door behind him, he removed his phone from the pocket and connected it to one of the computers in the room using a USB cable. Nova, it's time to work, Aaron said as a signal for Nova to connect herself to the lab's computers so that she can be his assistant. I'm done, sir, Nova replied shortly after taking over all of the computers and machines in the lab. Okay, let's create a bigger brain for you. Now we start with the creation of Majorana fermion qubits, and for that we need to create Majorana fermion. Creating Majorana fermions is a key step in developing qubits for the quantum chip he wanted to create. Majorana fermions are particles that are their own antiparticle, and they have unique properties that make them ideal for use in qubits. Unlike ordinary particles, Majorana fermions obey non-abelian statistics. This means that when two Majorana fermions are exchanged, the result depends on the order in which the exchange takes place. This property is important for performing topological quantum computations. To create Majorana fermions, he needed to fabricate a nanowire made of a semiconductor material, indium arsenide. He started this process by trying to grow the nanowire using a technique called molecular beam epitaxy, MBE. After putting the indium arsenide in the machine and closing the door, Aaron said, create a vacuum chamber and heat the semiconductor material, then allow it to condense on a substrate and form a thin film. Yes, sir, Nova replied and started the machine by starting to remove the air in it to create a vacuum and begin the next process. Aaron, who was watching the process, added, make sure you keep an eye on the machine's parameters for us to find optimal settings we can use. Yes, sir, but it might be difficult to find the optimal setting of the machine by the first try, Nova informed Aaron, so that he doesn't get his hopes up. I know, don't worry about failing, Nova said as he sat down in front of another computer and said, send a copy of my IDE, programs used for writing, testing, and debugging code, to this computer. Nova did as asked and sent a copy of Aaron IDE to the computer he sat on from her servers. Are you developing something else while you wait for the process to be done? Nova asked. Yeah, I'm writing the firmware for the quantum chip, Aaron answered Nova's question, then started typing like a machine gun. Lines and lines of code in Prometheus++ were appearing like they were being written by machine. No mistakes were made at all since he started typing the instruction. He didn't have to stop and think for anything because everything was assimilated in his head when he bought the knowledge from the system shop. Despite Prometheus++ being able to write many instruction in just short lines by the time an hour had passed, Aaron was more than 97,000 lines of code in, and he wasn't even a quarter of the way done. As for Nova, she wasn't even halfway done with her first trial of making Majorana fermions. 7 hours later. Sir, it's done, Nova said to Aaron through the lab speakers. Aaron, who was in the zone, finally stopped after typing in a few more lines when Nova called him. Okay, now let's take a look at the results, Aaron said while heading to the MBE machine. After removing the said nanowire created by Nova, he headed to the electronic microscope and inserted it in. You can begin, he said to Nova after he finished inserting the nanowire in the microscope. Nova started taking images of the nanowire and showing the results on the screen in front of Aaron. Aaron skimmed through the images and was slightly disappointed after finding out that the nanowire was very defective. Although he expected a failure on his first try, he still had a slim hope to succeed in his first try. "Show me the machine's parameter during the time which the nanowire came out as perfect," Aaron said, wanting to know what changed to cause the defects to appear on the nanowires. Nova did as asked and showed Aaron what he asked for. After looking through the parameters, he asked, "What happened at this timeline?" He asked that because the parameters went wild during a period where most of the defects seemed to appear. The machine seemed to have trouble keeping constant power control over a long period of time. "Take over its power control and all other things that seem to have caused the defects," Aaron said after learning what caused the defects. "Yes, sir." Nova immediately took over control of the entire machine, and not just what Aaron asked him to take over. She wanted to avoid any more chances for other problems to arise. Aaron put the indium arsenide in the machine for the second time and closed the machine's door. "Start the process," he said, and waited for the process to begin. Then he returned to the computer to continue with the writing of the firmware. 2 hours later. "Sir, you need to eat." Nova reminded Aaron that he hasn't eaten for more than 9 hours. "Thanks," Aaron said as he left the lab to eat outside, as he couldn't bring the food in due to the lab being a clean room, and nothing, even dust, is allowed to avoid contamination of the machine. 5 hours later. "Sir, the process is done." Nova called to the Aaron, who returned to his typing routine after eating his food outside with the guards. Aaron stood up from his chair once again and repeated the process of removing the nanowires and placing them in the electronic microscopes. Aaron couldn't help but jump in joy when he checked the results and found out that they were perfect and defect-free as he needed them to be. "Congratulations, sir." Nova congratulated Aaron in succeeding to make his first perfect nanowires. "You did most of the hard work. Take some credits too." "Thank you, sir." After making sure the nanowires were as he needed them to be, he took them and brought them to another machine that he started using to bring the nanowires into contact with a superconductor. The machine did this by depositing a thin layer of superconducting material niobium on top of the nanowires. When the wires and the superconducting material come in contact, the superconducting material induces superconductivity in nanowire, which results in the creation of Majorana fermions qubits at the end of the nanowires. After that, he put the qubits in a freezer, and he returned to continue with the creation of another batch of nanowires, as the ones he made weren't nearly enough to meet his demands. For the following days, Aaron did nothing other than create a new batch of nanowires every 7 hours after he removed the completed batch. After the completed batch of nanowires is removed from the machine, he immediately follows with creating qubits. By using the nanowires, then he immediately stores them in the refrigerator where he stored all of his completed qubits in them. The remaining time was spent on writing the code for the architecture for the quantum chip that he will create. As for sleeping, eating, and other things, Nova reminded him about his meal and sleep time. And he did other jobs such as using the toilet and cleaning himself during the 7-hour waiting period for the nanowires to be made. So other than him sleeping, nothing in the lab was allowed any rest at all. As for Nova, since she doesn't feel tired, she was awake and watching over Aaron all the time, making sure he is safe in the lab all the time, and making sure the machines work as intended and prevent any system crash. 15 days later. By the 15th day mark, Aaron had finally reached the amount of qubits he wanted. He managed to reach the needed amount after repeating the process, and he did it a total of 51 times within those 15 days. Aaron removed the final nanowires and turned them into qubits, then placed them into the same refrigerator he stored all the qubits he made. Then he sat down to rest a little. After resting for a short period of time, he stood up and started with the next step he had to take. He opened the refrigerator where he stored all of the qubits he created and removed them. Although it seems like everything he made could be carried with just one of his hands, the number of the qubit inside the holding was more than 5,000. He put the qubit holder in a machine that he will use to control the Majorana fermions to create quantum chip. After putting the qubits in the machine, he started the cryogenic system to cool the qubits to extremely low temperature, approaching absolute zero, minus 273.15 degrees Celsius. Half an hour later. "Sir, it's done." Nova told Aaron when the qubits were cooled to nearly absolute zero temperature. Aaron stood up and moved to the screen that showed what was happening with the Majorana fermions in the machine. He followed this with magnetic fields and microwave sources to manipulate the properties of Majorana fermions to perform quantum operations on them. Although the manipulation of Majorana fermions is a complex and challenging process, it wasn't causing him any difficulties at all. Most of the troubles usually come from the process requiring precise control over a wide range of parameters such as temperature, magnetic field strength, and microwave frequency. But he managed to avoid all of these by handing over complete control of the machine to Nova, as she could make sure the machine doesn't deviate from the instructed parameters at all. After manipulating and controlling the qubits, he immediately started the next step of integrating them into a larger circuit. Nova takeover, Aaron said, leaving everything that he needed to do in Nova's hands, as it needed precise control, and he had already written all the needed instructions and gave it to her. Nova took over the machine and immediately started to integrate the qubits into a larger quantum circuit. This involved connecting multiple qubits together using specialized wiring and circuitry and performing operations on the qubits in a coordinated manner. Aaron did nothing other than wait and hope the chip comes out without any problems. Because if it comes out as defective chip, he will have to restart the entire process again from the start, and he would have wasted 15 of his 30 days in the lab. The longer the time passed while waiting, the more nervous he became. So he decided to distract his nervousness by completing the quantum architecture for the chip that is being made by Nova. 2 days later. "Sir, the process is done," Nova told Aaron, who was in trance as he continued typing on the computer. "Finally," Aaron said as he stood and went to the machine to remove the chip inside it. He removed the chip and placed it into the electronic microscope to see if there were any defects in it. Nova started the electronic microscope and started taking pictures. Then she started analyzing the images. "Sir, it seems that there is a small part of the chip that has some defects," Nova said as she zoomed in on the said defects in the image of the chip. Aaron looked at the defects and asked, "Does it affect any of the function of the chip?" "Due to it, about 100 qubits cannot be accessed as the connections leading to it are disconnected." "Any other defects?" he asked after looking at the said defect. "Other than the first defect, everything else came as we wanted them to be." "So the remaining 5,000 qubit don't have any visible defect, right?" "Yes, there are no other visible defects. As for other problems, we will have to test the chip to know about them." Aaron jumped in excitement as he finally managed to get the chip with the computing power he needed. "Yep, but the testing will have to wait," Aaron added after calming himself down a little. Aaron said that while removing the completed quantum chip from the machine and storing it in a vacuum-sealed storage device. Then he returned and started creating another batch of nanowires to create another batch of qubits. "Why? We don't have a motherboard capable of providing the amount of power the chip needs to function properly. I have to make one myself," Aaron replied to Nova as he returned to coding after putting the material needed to create the nanowires in the machine to fabricate them. Then he returned to typing on his computer like he didn't just create the world's most powerful chip. After typing like a machine gun, without stopping for about an hour, he finally finished writing the entire quantum architecture that had millions and millions of instruction sets. One of the biggest advantages when it comes to buying knowledge from the system shop is that it gives you the knowledge of everything that the product touches upon, and the knowledge is at its highest it will ever be, meaning it can't be made any better than that. This meant that those instructions set in the quantum architecture are capable of utilizing the quantum chip to its limit without leaving any wasted potential. So even if someone somewhere in the world created a quantum chip like his, they won't be able to utilize it to its best capacity, because they will have to discover how they can make the architecture use the chip efficiently from the ground up. And even though Aaron has the knowledge to create the best quantum chip that will ever be created, there is currently no machine available to help him in creating them. That's why he had to compromise and create a Morgana fermion qubit-based quantum chip. As he waited for his new batch of Majorana fermions qubits to be created, and now that he had completed writing the quantum architecture for the chip, he decided to spend the waiting time to create companion hardwares that could be used to utilize the chips he was creating and for his one other project. 15 days later. "And with that we are done," Aaron said, as he removed the new quantum chip Nova finished making from the machine. After removing it, he stored it with the other chips he made inside the vacuum-sealed storage device, then closed and locked it. He carried the storage device with the chips inside. Then he left the lab for his last and final time. Outside the lab, is everything accounted for? Aaron asked one of the bodyguards who were helping him carry the things he created in the lab in a specialized delivery vehicle. Yes, sir. We just have to store that, and we will be done, Donald. One of the bodyguards said as he pointed at the storage device in Aaron's hand. No, this is not going with the truck. It will stay with me. Aaron said, implying that he will personally be responsible for carrying the storage device that had quantum chips in them. Tell your security team to make sure nothing goes wrong with the things inside. I will give each of you a bonus if nothing happens to them, Aaron said to Donald, raising the importance of what they were carrying to a level higher than they first thought. Inside the special delivery vehicle there were motherboards and other devices he created in his remaining 15 days in the lab. After the special delivery vehicle left with a convoy of escort cars that had fully armed guards in them, Aaron turned to the lab manager and said, "Thank you for your hospitality," to Jim, the manager of the lab, while handing the lab keys to him. He was thankful that no one disturbed him during the month-long period he was in the lab. "You are welcome," Jim replied to Aaron as he received the keys from him. "Please call me at once after you finish evaluating the damages done to the machines. I will reimburse for all the damages done to them immediately after you inform me." Aaron said this to Jim to make him be prepared for the mess he caused inside. This was because some of the machines inside, though capable of doing tasks other than what they were made for, they weren't exactly made with those tasks in mind. So he had to ask Nova to do some modifications in them. After Nova's modification, they continued working without any trouble, but since he needed to destroy anything that could even hint at what he made, he ended up having to ask Nova to corrupt all the machines he used after deleting every bit of data within them, making it impossible to even repair them and learn what he used them for. "Yes, we will call you immediately after we complete doing the check," Jim replied with a slightly concerned face in his eyes. But all of that was acting on his part. Inside, he was extremely happy that they finally had a chance of renewing their machines in the lab. He even hoped that Aaron destroyed all of them, as that would make this transaction overly beneficial to them. Aaron left immediately after he finished talking with Jim. In the car, he could be seen sitting with the storage device besides him. "Did you get the toys in the list I gave you?" Aaron asked Donald. "Yes, sir. The car carrying them left together with the convoy that is carrying your things," Donald replied, as he gave back the card Aaron gave to them when he entered the lab. "Okay, good." With that, Aaron continued his journey peacefully. When they arrived at the hotel, they packed their luggages and left for the airport without wasting any time. 2 days later, Aaron could be seen sitting inside his house's basement. He arrived yesterday and decided to spend it with his family as he waited for the delivery convoy to arrive. When the vehicle arrived, he asked the security team to help him move the things inside the truck to the basement of the house that he was using as the location of his home server that he stopped using after the completion of the server farm. Now it remains as a backup server. He decided to use this as his makeshift lab because he will have to assemble and store his newly made quantum computer and other things he made in the lab here. Henry, who was sad that his brother lied to him and came back without a gift, was now ecstatic when a truck full of his toys arrived with a convoy, to the point that he didn't even try to help his brother at all. Though Aaron would have denied his help, asking to do so showed that he cared, which currently he didn't at all, as his mind was on the new toys. Children. Now back to Aaron. Aaron finally started working on assembling the quantum computer. He picked the motherboard he made in the lab, then he removed the 5,000-qubit quantum chip he made from the storage device and installed it in the motherboard. After making sure he installed the chip properly, he removed another similarly looking chip but bigger and installed it in the same motherboard but on the left side. He did the same thing again, but this time it was the biggest in size, and he installed it on the right side of the motherboard. With that, he had completed the assembly of the quantum computer. All that remained was him connecting it to power, and he would have a functioning quantum computer. As for what those two chip-like looking things that he installed on the left and right side of the motherboard were, they were a QRAM and a quantum hard drive. Although quantum chips are powerful, they can't be used to their full potential if they are used with conventional computer hardwares. To avoid this, he used 1,000 of the qubits he made after making the quantum chip to create the QRAM, quantum random access memory. The reason it was bigger despite having only a fifth of qubits compared to the quantum chip, which had 5,000, is because the qubits had to be arranged in a different style than the quantum chip, And to allow it to function as a QRAM, he also added a few things that were not in the quantum chip as they were not needed by it. The QRAM consisted of a network of 1,000 qubits arranged in a two-dimensional grid. Each qubit was connected to 4 neighboring qubits via quantum gates, forming a regular lattice structure. To store quantum information, the qubits will be initialized to a particular superposition state based on the memory address. To read or write to the QRAM, a series of quantum gates will be applied to the appropriate qubits. Just think of it as normal RAM, but with quantum salting in it. As for the biggest of the three, it was the quantum hard drive. It was a storage place of all the data the quantum computer needed to store, hence the size. But despite it being the biggest in size, it only had 3,500 qubits inside. But just with that amount of qubits, it was capable of storing nearly 500 petabytes of data, almost the same as Nova's original server. The quantum hard drive consisted of 3,500 qubits arranged in a three-dimensional lattice structure. Each qubit was connected to its nearest neighbors via quantum gates, forming the same but different lattice pattern from the QRAM. To store quantum information, the qubits will be initialized to a particular superposition state based on the data being stored. To read or write to the quantum hard drive, a set of quantum gates will be applied that entangles the qubit at the desired memory address with a set of readout or input qubits, respectively. The readout or input qubits will then be used to manipulate or extract the quantum state of the qubit at the desired memory address. The quantum hard drive has the capability to store large amounts of quantum information in a superposition of states, allowing for efficient storage and retrieval of quantum data. This allowed it to have the ability to perform read and write operations in a fast and efficient manner, making it suitable for use in a wide range of quantum computing applications. Although both the QRAM and the quantum hard drive had smaller numbers of qubits than the quantum chip, the difference in how they were arranged allowed them to do their task without any loss in efficiency on the side of the chip. This difference in arrangement also allowed them to ensure that the chip is able to access and store information faster without any loss in effectiveness.